future and with the social and cultural exclusions involved. Another one that I learned, I've only been in Vincentian 7 years now, was generational poverty. I learned that at one of our meetings. So if there's one thing you come out of this, there is such a thing as generational poverty, which means my dad was poor, I'm going to be poor, my kid's going to be poor, and his kid's going to be poor. They're not going to have a chance, so I'm not even going to try. Well, my dad was poor. He was an immigrant from Italy. He came with a suitcase. He was a farmer in Italy. They were so poor they didn't even own the land that they were digging. There were feudal farms in Italy. And the biggest thing for Italians when they came to Canada was to have their own piece of land. Even if it was 10 feet by 20 feet, it was their piece of land. They could put their tomato plant in it, and they didn't have to give those tomatoes away because they couldn't own the land. Generational poverty. Social and relational poverty. This comes from solitude, withdrawal, death of a spouse. Did you ever think that grief support is supporting poverty? They've lost this spouse or a loved one. Lack of communication skills, discrimination. That's all social and relational poverty. And those are addressed by the works of mercy. And then there's spiritual poverty. That's the one that really gets me. This involves those with inner emptiness and distress, disorientation in the absence of a religious dimension to their lives. It turns into apathy and moral confusion. I'm so hungry, I'm willing to steal so that my kids can have a decent something. My kid really wants that toy, so I'm going to go to Walmart and steal it. Because there's no way I'm going to be able to afford it. So, because they have no moral values anymore. The world has stripped it away from them. And we have to go back and say, yes, that is the way you should be living your life. And yes, you should be trying to go to church when you can. You should be praying when you can. And we'll help you do that. Reflecting on the works of mercy, why should we even bother looking at this? It's a way to reawaken our conscience, which too often has grown dull in the face of poverty. So if you get out of balance or unfocused, go back to the works of mercy. What is my mission statement? What am I supposed to be doing from the Vincentian point of view and from the church's point of view? Look at Scripture, look at the sacraments, and ask God's help as we search the lost and forgotten and serve the poor. Now there's a great booklet that you can get from the Catholic Church, and it looks like this, The Corporal and Spiritual Works of Mercy. It came out a couple of years ago when it was the Year of Mercy. And we have a couple in our parish. You can probably still order it from your diocese, or I think I got mine online as well. So put your faith into action and look for ways to live out the corporal and spiritual works of mercy. That's what we're all about. Be instruments of mercy to the poor.
One other teaching,
Yeah.
I think maybe it's only the Catholic Church left that teaches about sin,
Yeah.
evil. And until Henry Nouwen talks about this, until we recognize our own poverty,
Yes.
our own brokenness, then we can't see
do
it
anything.
in others.
Yeah. That's why I said the sacrament of reconciliation is so important. Being before the Blessed Sacrament is important. Praying the Rosary is important, right? Praying the Rosary is important. And, you know, they say, they say that, I went to Mass 2 days ago for Feast of St. Vincent de Paul. And I went to the church down the street, and they were celebrating the Feast of St. Gabriel, which is today, on that day, because there was a school Mass. So they brought the whole school to church. They were really great. I mean, you're talking about 400 kids from grade 1 to grade 8. And they bussed them over and everything. and the teachers did the readings and all that. But at the very end, you know what the kids did? 3 kids from school council got up, and they brought an empty box with them. And they said, we're doing a school project for the next 2 weeks, and we want all the kids in the school to bring canned goods for the food bank. They don't have a St. Vincent de Paul's, even in that parish, but Catholic social teaching is being taught in that grade school. Because they're the ones who came up with the idea that with Thanksgiving being around the corner, we should be doing something for the poor. And the words that came out of that 7-year-old, that grade 7 kid, the 10-year-old, is part of social justice. I've never heard a 10-year-old say the word social justice before. So the young ones know what needs to be done, and they'll be doing it too. So teach that to your kids as well. But Henry Noonan, wow, he's the biggie. It's one of the biggies for sure.
A lot of big ones out there, people. Okay, we are going to look at the book in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I need you to just do a little head count here. There's 23 of us in the room. Raise your hand if you are a spiritual advisor of a conference or a council. Okay. Raise your hand if you're a president of a conference or council. Good. Raise your hand if you're a priest.
We got 4 deacons.
Raise your hand if you're a deacon. Raise your hand if you're a layperson. What do you people?
You're a
You're all
layperson.
Here, raise your hand if you're a layperson. Put your hand up. Okay. In this room, we are overwhelmingly laypersons. Okay, we have 4 deacons of 23 people. We are overwhelmingly laypersons. We are, some of us, presidents or spiritual advisors of councils or conferences. And I'm assuming that the 4 deacons, you're here, you guys put your hand up for being spiritual advisors of a conference or a council. I know that Deacon Roy is the spiritual advisor of the Windsor-Essex Central Council. And Deacon Rudy is the spiritual advisor for the Sarnia Particular Council.
St. Philip's, St.
And-
Vincent Paul Conference,
And for St. Philip, both St. Philip and
Nice.
Particular Council
and
of
that's
Sarnia.
Columbus, 4th degree Nation Columbus.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Okay, I
Busy,
understand. Yeah.
Wearing a lot of
List
hats
them off, list them off.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah, and you know that these guys are the spiritual advisors for their home conferences and for your particular council. And, you know, it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. But the majority of us here are lay people. Whether you're a president looking for a spiritual advisor or whether you are a spiritual advisor, I want you to consider the validity of lay people, okay? We're the laity. And we are valid to hold our own in our lay Catholic society. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, I have to read you a couple of quotes, says the lay faithful, it talks about the lay faithful in the words, the faithful who by their baptism are incorporated into Christ and integrated into the people of God are made sharers in their particular way in the priestly, prophetic, and kingly office of Christ. And they have their own role to play in the mission of the whole Christian people on earth and in the world. Now, in short, that just says that you and I, whether we're lay people or whether we're ordained people, because we're baptized, we are priests and prophets and kings. When was the last time somebody told you you were a priest? Didn't they just tell you, no, your gender precludes that you can't? No, you're a priest, okay? Way back in 1946, Pope Pius XII made a quote that was repeated by St. John Paul. He said, lay believers are in the front lines of the church life. For them, the church is the animating principle of human society. Hey, we're the front lines. Well, we kind of knew that, didn't we? Therefore, they in particular ought to have an ever clearer consciousness not only of belonging to the church, but of being the church. That is to say, the community of faithful on earth under the leadership of the Pope, the common head, and of the bishops in communion with him. They are the church. That goes back to 1946. That's pretty progressive for 1946.
It started even in the previous century.
It did. But I thought it was interesting that that was stated by Pius XII, and then it was repeated. It bared repeating by JP2, by the guy who made sainthood just a little while ago. Pope Francis just last June said, "Baptism makes each one of the lay faithful a missionary disciple of the Lord. Not a delegation from the hierarchy, but destined by God by virtue of baptism and confirmation." And the Holy Father also reflected on, and his words, the many lay associations with a history of service and charism that shines throughout. That's us, people. We're one of those many lay associations. We have our own charism. We have our own way, the Vincentian way. And we have shined out through history. So I know it's very difficult to find a priest or to find a deacon or to find a sister who doesn't have 7 different jobs to do. Okay? And a Monsignor that I knew said just a little while ago, if the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is waiting for a priest to suddenly appear who's ready to serve you, you can wait a long time. You're a lay association, step up. Okay? And that's really kind of what we have to do. It's been forced upon us. It's not a bad thing, because, you know, our primary purpose isn't to feed and clothe and shelter and make nice with poor people. Our primary purpose is the sanctification of each other. That's our role, that's our job. The way we do it is through service. But our primary purpose is us, and that's what we're going to do, folks. So basically that's what we're going to do. Today's church, according to our international society, we are told the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is an autonomous entity, a lay society with official status in civil law and recognized by the Holy See as a lay society under the category of pious social works. We're recognized by the Pope. We are a lay society. If you're hesitant about lay people stepping up and taking on roles, don't be hesitant. It's who we are. It's what we need to do. So, on that little note, by the way, who's got my favorite pen?
That's right here.
Oh, okay, never mind, I get a little.
I almost took it.
I know. Is there anybody who hasn't signed our sign-in sheet? Just don't take my favorite.
I was hoping she wouldn't ask
You
for
came
it.
in late, you can't have that pen stuck
That's okay, I have a pen here.
in. You can use my pen,
All right,
but I'm a little protective.
I'll sanctify your pen.
Okay, thank you. Please do that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at the Black Book. And this is the result of a year or so of work by these two guys and me, trying to pull together,
I'll take that.
these are John's 40 for later, we tried to pull together a collection of material and put it in one spot that you would find useful, that everyone hopefully will find useful for a council or a conference to have, okay? We're going to hand these out. Please pass them down. And take a look.
They're cold.
And we're going to go through it briefly together.
Let's not forget the front line, okay?
Oh, no, we won't, I promise.
They all got one now, one more?
Okay, another box full here.
No more.
And you can all thank my husband, Dick, in the back row here. My husband, not Phil, for working so hard to compile these, put these together for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Thanks, Dick.